Good morning once again to all the panelists and participants. It's a pleasure to have to coordinate this panel discussion on such an important topic relating to ERM in respect of ERM versus vis-a-vis recent amendment in the LODR. Let me just set up the tone before we start talking to panelists, just to give a brief on the LODR regulation, on the history of the regulation, and broad contents of how it looks like. It is a story from section 21 to rule 21. After SEBI came up in 1992, section 21 of Securities Contract Regulation Act was amended. Section 12A was inserted in 2004, which gave SEBI a lot of power in the matters relating to IPOs, issuance of capital, securities, listing related formalities, and such other incidental matters. Companies Act 2013 was another trigger. Once this act came, by that time there was a need to consolidate all the SEBI regulations, so all the SEBI notifications, directives, and guidelines which came up from time to time in relation to issue management or regulating the issues. SEBI also included the aspect of proposed to be listed companies. For example, the companies which have issued DRH has already filed DRHP, but issue has not yet come. Those companies are also brought within the purview of LODR regulation. The other aspect is that LODR was required to consolidate all of these together. Secondly, align these guidelines vis-a-vis New Companies Act 2013. Thereafter, now if you look at the LODR, LODR is in 4 parts. First part is a common obligation related regulation, Rule 5 to Rule 1415. Second, corporate governance related regulation, Rule 17 to Rule 27. Third, intimations and disclosures, Rule 29, 30, 33, 46. Rule 46 relates to all website disclosures. All website disclosures related items are taken into that. And fourth is the other obligations. Within corporate governance, 17 to 27, of course, it is based on the basic OECD principles which SEBI has looked into in late 90s. And within that, Rule 21 talks about risk management committee. Overall corporate governance regulations talk about various aspects like independent director, women director, non-executive director, then materiality, conflict of interest, whistleblowing, succession plan, remuneration to directors, code of ethics for directors. And within that, Rule 21 was separately created for risk management committee. It also gave detailed idea about detailed composition and various other details for 4 committees, which includes risk management committee as well. From the perspective of today's topic, another aspect is also important. If you look at section 134(3) of Companies Act, which says that directors' responsibility statement should talk about development of the risk management policy and its implementation, plus any additional risk which threatens the existence of the company. Code of conduct is laid down in Schedule 4, which also talks a lot about the on the diligence on to know the adequacy of, and effectiveness of the existing risk management process, robustness of the risk management process. Recent amendment in LODR in the month of May has expanded the ambit of this risk management related measures, including 1000 companies, top 1000 companies from earlier regulation which was applicable to top 500. When I look into this 500 to 1000 companies, definitely it falls within the, let's say, market capitalization of 4000 crores to 600 crores. So if you are a listed company above 600 crores capital or proposed to be listed company, definitely this will be applicable to you. Now, in fact, risk management definitely has been an area of emphasis for the regulators. We all know that there are a lot of complexity in the businesses, and businesses are getting integrated, which throws a lot of uncertain risks. COVID-19 is another area which really made us to know that anything uncertain can happen, and the business can be vulnerable to lot of uncertain factors. So let's discuss with the panelists on the key recent amendments and its impact on the ERM. So to start with, ladies first. So my first question would be to Preeti. If you can just elaborate, Preeti, as to what are the major changes from risk management perspective of in LODR in the month of May. Preeti, you are on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Lakshmikant. Uh, Now, LODR has recognized the need for a holistic point of view as far as risk is concerned. Much after the happenings of COVID and the 1.5 years of anomaly that we have faced, now we are into an era where risk cannot be undermined. So, if you talk about the major changes, like you rightly said, now it has moved from a focus of 500 listed companies to 1,000 listed companies. We all know that. Besides that, they laid down the components of the risk management policy, which has to be mandatorily there, which will also include, amongst others, a BCP policy, a risk infrastructure, and all that. Okay, now the major change is the risk management committee. Whereas earlier it was prescribed to have 2 members, now it is going to have 3 members minimum, and one director. One director has to be an independent director. Then the quorum was not prescribed earlier, but now it is twice in a year. The meeting, it was once in a year. Now it is twice in a year. It has to be, and the difference between the 2 meetings should not exceed 180 days. And of course, the roles and responsibilities is as per the Part D of Schedule 2. And it has given the risk management committee power to seek any information from any employee or hire the help of outside consultants to determine any fact that they think is in the interest to mitigate any risk. So that is one thing. And another matter is the disclosure difference, that the description of the terms of reference, composition, the name of the chairman, etc., has to be there. They have to periodically report to the not only to the board of directors, but it has to appear in the annual report as well. So from my side, this if the panelists can add something to it.
Yeah, Manish, if you can further elaborate by just getting an idea into as to how governance aspect is positively or negatively impacted, or which are the changes which really is on the improvement side from governance perspective, as far as risk management committee is there, or the overall amendments are there.
Right. So first of all, good morning to everyone. Good morning to our panelist member, and good morning to all uh, the joinees on this webinar. So thank you for joining, and I would also like to take an opportunity to thank Risk Pro team for giving an opportunity to express our views on this very important amendment which has come in LODR. So first of all, if I mention about the amendments which have been brought into this LODR, I think these are very important steps which have been brought into by SEBI. If I need to summarize the all the amendment, I will talk about important key amendments which has an impact on the governance perspective. Uh, if I have to summarize the entire amendment part, I would say that uh, uh, the role and the responsibility of risk management committee has been enhanced to the next level, and the accountability has been increased. And I would mention that the attempt has been made to give a similar status as it is enjoyed by the audit committee. So the lot of decision making which used to get ratified with the board of directors. So now certain powers has been established within the risk management committee. I would say this will take risk management process to the next level. And since we are living in a very uncertain world, especially from last 2 years, and we don't know what is going to happen in the next 2 weeks also. So uh, I would mention that this was these were the key amendments which was required. And if I look into before amendment, I would say some of the companies were already following these particular practices.
Yeah.
However, to enhance, to have a uniformity, to have the standardization across the companies, I think these are the very welcome moves. Especially, I'm happy to see that the net of risk management process has been enhanced from top 500 companies to top 1,000 companies. That's a good move has happened. Secondly, if I see that earlier the meetings which were mandatory to be conducted for top 500 company, it was only one mandatory in a year, but now it has been increased to two. So, and within the two meetings, there should not be a gap of more than 180 days. The quorum has been defined. Earlier, the quorum was not there as such mandatory. In fact, if I look at the composition of RMC, earlier even the senior executive could be a part of say RMC. Now it has been made mandatory that majority and director side. So I think this all is going to contribute to enhancing the governance and increasing the importance towards this subject. And I would mention that that in every organization we need to have risk averse culture. We need to have a risk culture. We need to think about plan A, plan B, and if plan A doesn't work, there has to be plan B ready. So this is a very qualitative exercise, which earlier the importance was there and limited to certain companies, but now it has been expanded towards more companies. And if I look at the role and responsibility, as I was mentioning, it has been increased for risk management committee. Earlier, the board of directors was used to define the roles and responsibility and delegate the monitoring, the risk management plan and such other functions. However, if I look at after the amendment, formulating the policy, the risk management policy, as well as reviewing that policy on a regular basis, and the gap should not be more than 2 years, considering the uncertainties, considering the changes which are happening so fast nowadays, and monitoring the risk on a different perspective, monitoring the risk with a different methodology, process, and system that need to be defined.
Right.
One important amendment which has been brought is appointment of CRO, that is Chief Risk Officer. Its removal and its terms of remuneration is also now is with the Risk Management Committee. So all in all, I would say these are the important steps which SEBI has taken, and this will all contribute to develop a risk-averse culture within the organization.
Yeah, I fully agree, Manish. I mean, basically detaching a few functions from audit committee and we can say demerging and separating it out to a separate experts who are into risk management. And again, it is not a subcommittee of audit committee; it's directly from the board. Definitely, having a separate committee of just risk experts will definitely increase the focus on the risk. Otherwise, we all, of course, have attended audit committee. We all have seen that. Okay. Audit committee just discusses listens to the internal auditors, stat auditors, looks at financials, some investor complaints, and then meeting ended. So now definitely there can be increased focus on this. Mr. Surat, if you have anything to add on this before I jump to the next question.
So I think I think it's well covered by Manish. So I think the main important thing for me is that I see this identity being created outside the audit committee with a lot of powers to them to ask questions, to approve, to review what is going on around it, because it's a very this is the main aspect which really makes sure that the going concern concept of the organization is in place. It is not about the nitty-gritties, but it's about really steering the ship. So being accountable, being responsible for the whole platform, and a rigor around the meetings, the frequency, the appointment of the chief risk officer, having a right policy in place, that policy being reviewed. So all the right things are in place, and a complete separate identity has been given to this platform,
Correct.
separate from the audit committee. And if this really works well, we could see less surprises. If this platform really works with independence and focus, and if the company really gives the due independence and importance to this. So there is a lot of aspect which the companies needs to do. It's not about only forming the committee, but really allowing them to have that free hand, which is very important for me.
Come to the next question, Mr. Mukherjee. How is ERM different from IFC and from operational risk?
The way I look into it is for the enterprise risk management, you have all the risks and all the aspects which are enterprise threatening and which could really have a impact on the organization's top line, bottom line, its operational environment. So IFC and operational risk are a subset of that. So it is engraved into the enterprise risk management process also. So it's just a subset. So for IFC, you are looking at mostly the financial controls of ICOFAR and the controls which are leading to the assurance that your reporting and the numbers are true and fair. They are flowing without any interruption. They are not kind of modifiable, and they can flow from quarter to quarter in a seamless manner, and you have enough IT or non-IT checks and balances which are in place. Operational risks are the bread and butter stuff which happens every day. So you are managing your customer, you're managing your order, you're managing your vendors, third party, your ecosystem, your stat compliances and everything. So these two are a subset of the risk management, which also talks about how the enterprise is actually looking at its long-term risks. So how it is managing its product portfolio, how is it managing its succession, how is it managing the government side of the risk if sudden changes happens in the government policies and its implementation, what kind of impact it can have. It talks about the key raw material procurements, especially in an industry like ours, mines and minerals, highly regulated industry. So how you can make sure that it is you are always on the right side of the law and you have a long-term visibility of that. So the enterprise risk typically for even large organizations should be counted on the fingers. So you should not really break it down too much threadbare, but the top management and the risk management committee should look into the top 5 or 10 risks, which if not managed effectively, even social media risk is becoming one of the enterprise threatening risk. Suddenly it can blow out. So all those risks which can lead to serious disruption in the business model or in the reputation of the organization, that needs to be put up, and typically the business leaders have them at the back of their hand. But this gives a structure to that whole madness, so that you can go back and see how you are how it is data based, how it is based on scientific studies, how it is based on expert opinion, so that if a company goes wrong tomorrow, you can actually look into these documents to see what could have been predicted and was not predicted, what could have been reviewed and not reviewed, and what the company missed, or it was something which was completely unforeseen.
Nice reply. In fact, we can get from you that ERM is more on the strategic side, where the business survival, business strategy plans itself may fail, may go for toss, while operational risk is more relating to day-to-day operations of the company. But of course, as you mentioned, rightly mentioned, that operational risk is a part of the ERM. Coming to the next question, Mr. Surat and Manish, what are the major challenges in smaller companies in implementing ERM, and how should we tackle with those changes?
So Manish, you can take to start.
Yeah, I'll take this. So as I was mentioning in my discussion also, the net for this process has been enhanced from now 500 to top 1000 company. I think the major challenges which organization is going to face is, first of all, this is a new complete exercise which they have to come up and the employees will need a training on this. What is the purpose? What is the object of risk management exercise? First of all, the risk management framework which organization will establish, that has to be established in line with the objects and strategy of the organization. What will be the risk appetite, how much risk they are ready to take, and how much the risk they want to transfer it. I think these are the key aspects which they need to think of it. And secondly, the belief has to be brought into the organization that this is a very important exercise, because in this exercise nothing is wrong or nothing is right. It's about the perspective, how we foresee the future and how we foresee the things could shape up into, and we need to be prepared for the worst case. And if we are into, if we that's what, if we don't come across those incidents, so the path would be smoother for the organization. So I think the risk appetite, the training to the people, and aligning the framework with the strategy of the organization. I think these three key aspects will be important for any new organization to implement this framework.
In tackling the situation, I think more like how to tackle with the in getting the buy-in. For example, implementing these, definitely we all face a lot of buy-in related issues. So how to tackle directly, basically, and get the buy-in? Of course, I'll come
So
to you, Mr.
basically, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mukherjee.
You want me to answer, Manish?
Yeah.
It's fine. So basically, you know, this will, this is a change of mindset which is required. See, any such governance and compliance processes needs a lot of investment in people, in technology, and in time. So sometimes small organizations may find it, counterproductive, and they have smaller bandwidth, and they want to, kind of do it as a tick in the box. So what the enterprises, all of us, we need to understand is that every big company today, which we laud and we look up to, were small one day, and they have become big today only because they have done some of these basic things in a very diligent manner, and they have actually followed the guiding principles, not really looking at the statute or the mandates, but more self-driven things. So we have seen the IT companies, which are like now the kind of driving global best practices. They have done so many things on their own, picking up the sticks from multiple global compliances, multiple global frameworks. They have already started doing this for long. Whether you take it on the sustainability side, on the business continuity side, they have been doing these things. So it is important that we forget about legality, law, and what is mandated by Companies Act and SEBI. We should actually think that this is something which is going to augment the business model. This is going to be of great return on investment in the long term. It is going to make us more prepared for any unforeseen eventuality. We have to always think that what if this doesn't happen? What if that doesn't happen? Tomorrow or today, many things could be easily available. Many things could be easily bypassed. Many things could be easily managed. But tomorrow, if that doesn't happen, it takes a whisker of a pen to make your life very difficult. So if you are prepared for that eventuality with a plan, with a sourcing plan, with a mitigation plan, then it doesn't fall on your head. So you, as Manish was mentioning, you should have a plan B, plan C, plan D if required, depending upon what can go wrong. And it's not about only having it on an Excel sheet or on a PowerPoint presentation. It is the mindset which is important. If you are prepared in the mind, like when we go trekking, we have so many things prepared in our mind that this may go wrong, that may go wrong, somebody can have something, something may fall. But then you have all the tricks of the trade with you. You have the rope, you have the chisel, so that you are prepared. Maybe nothing can happen. You come back very smoothly, but something can happen. But then you have all those tools and tackles with you. So it's about the mindset. It's investment people do in so many things, but it is about the mindset and then taking it a step at a time.
True. Mr. Mukherjee, your company Dalmia Bharat, like it is a new entrant within this regulation, and now this regulation will be applicable, and you have to comply with the May 2021 amendments, plus main part of the LODR regulation relating to risk. So, what steps your company has taken in implementing ERM and to comply with this regulatory requirement? Because it is applicable now. So,
yeah. So luckily we were already having a risk management committee and an audit committee. Only thing which we used to do is we used to merge the two. So now the act clearly says that you cannot merge the two. So we used to have common members. So we would have a presentation by the chief risk officer in that particular forum, then followed by the audit committee and the presentation by the statutory auditor and all those stuff, right? And also ending with the accounts presentation. So one thing we have to be very clear now that it has to be separate, completely separate. Completely, the agenda has to be drawn separately. Time has to be allocated separately to that. The members need to be told about their powers which they have to ask questions, to actually sign off the policies. So they need to officially sign off the policy, and the review mechanism has to be documented and completely signed off. So these and because the frequency we were anyway maintaining, because we were doing it 4 times a year, so that's not an issue. But what we need to do is there has to be an education round which has to go with the directors, that what are their new responsibilities, what they need to appoint the chief risk officer. So that chief risk officer appointment needs to be ratified now, and following at a later date, if he is to be removed, then that has to be also ratified and stuff like that. So we need to more do stuff with respect to the documentary side, because we were already doing it, being a reasonably large market cap we have. So we are doing it, but now we need to separate it completely, have a completely separate agenda item, and then record it properly and make sure that the members, they understand what they are mandated to do and they do it accordingly.
My next question is, as a background, let me tell you, like ERM and the risk management has something which has come to India in around 1985-90 around, with the RBI's intervention, where RBI came up with and Basel and RBI came up with certain regulatory requirements in relation to capital adequacy of the banks. Banks were supposed to look at credit risk, then market risk and operational risk, and maintain minimum level of capital by computing certain operational loss. So those are the basically basic principles based on which banks have risk management system. Now my question is to all the panelists, means one by one we can take, how for a non-bank company, normal manufacturing company or service company, but not into lending borrowing, how ERM is different vis-a-vis banking ERM? So maybe question is to all the panelists. So Manish, you can start with probably.
Yeah,
maybe Preeti can start or Manish can start.
Okay. Okay, Preeti can start.
Okay, so the basic difference I see between the BFSI sector and the non-BFSI sector is that BFSI sector is much regulated by the regulators, and they generally follow the norms. Like RBI is a very strong regulator.
Yeah.
So they are governed by that. So they don't take initiatives on its own because it's always there. Some sort of be it systems audit, or be it Basel III, or liquidity and all those things. So that is much governed by that. But for the non-BFSI to voluntarily undertake such activities like risk management, or as he said, to adopt standards like 31,000 on their own, seeing best practices, global best practices. For large organizations, maybe they do, because somewhere or the other they are required to, or maybe they have the mandate from their management, global management. But small like manufacturing companies and all, they would be more interested in the operational risk part of it. So there is a difference, because that would be spotted immediately. If there are anomalies in the operation, it will directly hit their bottom line. So
yeah, Manish. And,
according to me, that is a basic difference. Now I can request our learned panelists to also put in their word.
Right. So I will just add on what Preeti said. I would, from my perspective, I think that in terms of implementation of framework, I think the principle will remain the same, be it a BFSI or non-BFSI. What will change is maybe a priority, the focus on which we need to put on more efforts. So, for example, BFSI, as Preeti was mentioning, that most of the things are, monitored through regulators. So we have RBI, we have IRDA, and those are monitoring on a very micro level. So they need to, because the BFSI sector mostly they handle the public money at large. So that becomes very critical and important also. Vis-a-vis, if I look at the manufacturing sector, I think uh, the priorities will change from maybe strategic, operational, and if I look into from last 2 years, I think the cyber threat, the cyber security has been the concern. Even in the last 2 meetings, I have been getting a question from the chairman of risk management that how our work from home environment is having the robust control as we had in
Yeah.
the office environment. So what has really changed and what has helped, and how we are secured in this environment also. So we have
Yeah.
taken certain initiatives, and there has been concerns from the committee, and to give a comfort to the committee as well as to the board, there are further initiatives that have been taken to ensure that the data is secured, the data is not affected, there are no unsecured transmission, there are no malicious softwares which we can get installed in our network. So I think the priorities will change, but the principle will remain the same.
Mr. Mukherjee?
My 2 cents on this is that when you have a regulated environment, you have a structure. So there is a clear-cut box which is given. Minimum box is prescribed. You can do more. There is never a ceiling. So, but the basic thing is given. But for the other sectors, it is free as of now. Till now, it's a free form. So somebody may do it very deep, very honestly, in a very wide expanse, and some people can do just a tick in the box by appointing a consultant, getting a certain template going, and then kind of people signing it off without really putting their mind. So what is important here, what we need to understand is the mind of the great people who sit on the board as independent directors and board members, who really understand business, macro and micro economy, the global events. They need to put their minds into that. It's not about the form which is created by a consultant coming from outside, but it is those continuous impetus and inputs into that framework which keeps it lively and keeps it ticking and keeps it a relevant document. So we should not wait for that, okay, an updation has to be done after 1 year or 2 years. So you cannot follow the law. You need to understand whether it is of good business sense and then follow it with the heart. So today you are not having a framework, but each industry needs to make its own framework and be honest with it. So I always expect that honesty into that particular subject, Otherwise, people should not take it as a tick in the box and say that, okay, we have done this and this, half an hour meeting and we are done. So good. So if that is the way it is done, it could throw up surprises, which may not be very pleasant one.
Yeah. Nice explanation. One additional amendment, important amendment in LODR was in relation to BCP, Business Continuity Plan. That point was added in the risk management committee's objectives, risk management objective. So the question is around that. Preeti, can you give idea of the key components of a BCP implementation?
Yeah. So when we are talking about risk management, it would be incomplete to go without the mitigation of these risks, right? So, so in the LODR, they have specifically mentioned within the components of risk policy itself that you must tie it up and align it with your business continuity plans, because with specific emphasis on crisis management. They've specifically said that you have a policy and framework for the BCP, and there has to be a crisis management plan. Not only that, a readiness assessments, simulation, and like he said, that you must plan for plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, so that the first fallback fails, the second fallback is there. So plan A, plan B, plan C is all part of the business continuity and planning only. And if you identify your risk, and if you don't mitigate them, don't have a treatment plan for that, then it is incomplete. So I think I like it that they logically, linked the risk management policy itself to linking it with the crisis management
Yeah.
plan and the BCP plan, so that all these things, that not only the plan is there, it is tested periodically, there's a simulation testing, and of course a crisis communication, because unless you communicate to the people and get their buy-in as well as the buy-in of the management, so communication plays a very pivotal role in emergency also, as we have just witnessed in the last 2 years, that we have been communicating through various channels to get our business done. So the linking of risk with the BCP is a very logical thing. In fact, if you see the global standards also, if you see ISO 22301 also, it is that pursuant to a risk management, you always go for a management buy-in to get the BCP DR plan in place, the DR, and get the funding for that. So I think that linking the policy
This is important to
the
have
risk
a
management
robust.
policy and the business continuity policy is quite logical.
Yeah,
Is quite
there is
logical.
importance to
I would
have
like the
a
views of the
robust.
other panelists.
Yeah, yeah. Just to extend this
Robust,
question for
yes,
other
because
panelists also. Yeah, just to extend the same question to other panelists also. What are the specific components of BCP plan which are really important from a manufacturing or service company perspective, which otherwise normally we do not recollect? For example, basics of disaster recovery, retrieval and mock retrieval and mock fire drill, all of those we all are aware. But specific points we generally we miss out in BCP, which is really important. Just one point each of you can highlight.
See, if I may take it, Manish, with your permission. So yeah, so
Yes, sir, please go
basically,
ahead,
see,
sir.
today, as we were talking, Manish also mentioned and Priti also mentioned, cyber is the most important thing, because now we are complete entire factory facility, everything, my equipment, my control room, everything is connected, right?
Yeah.
And any attack or any failure of that will just choke my my productivity and my my production. So how am I making sure that I am able to isolate myself from any attack? And I have made it difficult. So I can't say that I have fully covered myself, because I think all the security practices are always one step behind the fraudster or the hacker.
True. Yeah.
So we have to make a mechanism by which we just make it difficult. So how we isolate our core systems from the external threat, what we keep online, to what extent we allow remote access, to what extent we allow an interference into that system. So that we need to really carefully understand, and then what kind of backup we have. So if I'm hacked, can I shut down a certain system and can I put up another system which will at least make my production process online? Because the moment my production process stops, my feeding process stops, my procurement process stops. So there are a lot of just in time process which keeps on happening. So it has a huge impact on the entire ecosystem. So we have to be very clear that we not only establish something, but as Preeti rightly mentioned, as to how you can keep checking them, how you take a downtime, a real downtime in a quarter or in a certain specific time, to see that, okay, today I decide that my primary system is going to fail at 6 o'clock in the morning or at 12 o'clock at night. So within what point of time I can then shut it down and put it up? How can I do it remotely also? If I'm sitting in Delhi, can I fire my plant in, say, Tamil Nadu? Can I do it? Are the people aware of the processes? What is the impact on the data? Is my data seamlessly transitioning from one ecosystem to another, or there is a cutoff lag? What are the processes which are to be done later on to make sure that we are not missing a transaction or we are not missing an entry? So all of that. So it's like the fire drill, as you said, So fire brigades and all, they do these live drills day in and day out. Unless and until you feel that fire, that energy, and that risk head on in your practice, you will never be able to do it in real time. You can't say suddenly one fine morning you are at the 33rd floor fighting fire, fearing about your life, fearing about your asset and everything. So people have to go through that emotion, that tension, that what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't do? What do I do, right? So people have to work in tandem, in beautiful coordination. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, completely done. Now we rotate back. So it's easier said than done. There is a lot of support which is required for the management, because it's a cost, it's a risk which you are taking, but you need to take it. If you really want that system to work, when the real need comes, the real need can come in few decades, it may come in once in a century, right? But whether you are prepared for that, whether we are prepared mentally, who to call, which switch to pull first, what to pull second, it has to be clockwise precision.
True. Nice. Mr. Manish, if you have to add something.
Right. So I will say that BCP is a subset of risk management part, and it cannot be separated from it. I think the primary object for which we carry out this exercise is to ensure there is a business continuity, and there's a smooth transition to the various events which we come across. Now, what Mukherjee Saab was mentioning, that being prepared for the worst scenario, I think the best business continuity examples we would have noticed in the last 2 years, where there has been a COVID crisis and special task force team has been established within the organization to ensure there is a smooth transition from lockdown scenario to working environment in the manufacturing sites at least. So I remember that last year when it was a complete lockdown, and suddenly the government said that some of the industries up to this condition they have to meet to run their plants. So there are internal policies which were framed quickly. There was a licensing which was done between the government official bureaucrats as well as the internal employees at the site to ensure that nothing is missed out. And if there is some lapse, then again we fall back to the same situation where the production can be halted because of the cases. The production can be halted because of the lapses if we don't follow the regulations what they have been given. So I think in different areas, definitely it comes with a cost. So which are the primary areas the organization has to figure it out? Maybe a disaster recovery management team which has to be seen to do on a periodical drills whether our data is safe. The crisis management team is there upfront if there is something which goes wrong in particular site, so they get activated immediately. They know what to do. We need not to figure it out who has to do what is the responsibility of each and every aspect. I remember in my last organization we did a proper drill on the crisis management. If for example if there is a bad name, bad reputation created for the organization because of some miss out in the some fatality in the manufacturing side. So who would do what at what perspective, to whom it has to be informed, how it has to be tackled. I think this will not come immediately. You need to be prepared for it, and BCP as well as risk management, it goes hand in hand.
Sure. To the participants, the attendees, in fact, I have 1 or 2 questions, then I'll open the floor to the attendees for questions from the participants. 1 or 2 small questions are there. And in fact, we may continue till 12:15, 12:20 as well. So in fact, there are many participants coming from manufacturing side. So it may be definitely a useful information for them. The next question is risk management, ERM. Should it be responsibility of a finance team or a risk management team? Because IFC is something which is more related finance, because or IFC FR especially we can say more related to finance. But if we say ERM, should it be finance team's responsibility under CFO or under risk management responsibility, especially with the background that CRO's appointment is still not compulsory?
So if I may take this. So I think that there has to be somebody, even if there is no officially nominated CRO, but there has to be somebody under the CEO's office who have to take this mantle, because the risk management team has to work very closely with the business. So they are not doing an audit per se. They are kind of first talking to the entire subset of the organization, which includes the finance team. They are talking to everybody, from the admin to the security to the production to the procurement to the corporate affairs to the everybody, every single vertical. They are talking to those cross-section people and the subsets of teams which are created for the risk management purpose. Then they're collecting a sheet. From that manthan, they are finally then bringing out what are the top 5 or 10 and what are the others. Everything has to be monitored to see that the inherent risk is then, some actions are put on the inherent risk, and then the residual risk should be low. So that should be the objective. And if some actions, even after doing, the inherent risk becomes high, then that kind of should be on the radar on a 24/7 basis for the organization. So there has to be an individual or a set of people who have to drive this under the CEOs or the CEO's office, who would take part in all the business meetings, all the key strategic discussions, decisions, bypass, or whatever long cut, shortcut you take, and then make sure that there is a mitigation plan which is aligned, which is active, which can be documented, which can be proved in an audit environment. If an audit happens, if there has to be a certain standard which has to be put on the risk management practice, then it stands that test of the standard also. And then he prepares the deck for the risk management committee and the management from time to time, wherein he discusses all of this threadbare. The internal auditor should also talk to this particular person and call out certain inputs for his checking on a regular basis on site, how it is happening, and stuff like that. So I personally feel that finance or accounts, those kind of things is a subset of this particular thing. It has to be driven by somebody who is independent, as well as the same time ingrained in the business, who is mandated with this job 24/7, who has to talk to the ecosystem, both internal, external, and global, to see what is happening. Because today it's a complete connected world. Today you cannot say that something is happening in the globe. You are going to be impacted within 24 hours, if not earlier, for that particular thing, right?
Right. Mr. Manish, if you have to add up something.
If I have to,
so I have something to say here.
Yeah, please go ahead, Preeti.
Yeah, Preeti.
Sorry. So he said risk is a culture within the organization. We have to inculcate the culture so that it is there in every department, and we have to have that training and the awareness in everybody that this is to be done in this way. Unless risk percolates to the smallest, lowest level, it cannot be complied with. So it is all pervasive throughout the organization. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, Mr. Manish.
Yeah, I will address this question with the analogy of the very important concept which II has given is 3 line of defense. So the first and the primary line of defense is always the operational manager, who is responsible and accountable to manage the risk. So what risk management team is supposed to do is facilitate the process, bring that process and framework on the table, and explain them with what approach we need to think over it, what should be the thought process over it. The second line of defense, I think the risk management team, finance team, as Mukherjee sir was mentioning, that they are the subset of risk management part. So controller, maybe apart from controller, the CFO, the second line of defense. The third line of defense, I think it would be the internal audit, which will be monitoring the process, how it is being done. And I think this is a way maybe this can be managed.
Correct. It's a very well explanation, a very good explanation from all the panelists. It's really well explained.